Welcome to Shadow of Truth, Eric Pearson. Interrogation, the screwdriver murder that exposed a monster full-case breakdown, the man who thought he could talk his way out. Tap subscribe, drop a like, and hit the bell, because tonight we're pulling apart a confession so slippery it exposes the truth underneath. The camera's red light blinked in the interrogation room, steady, unblinking, patient. Eric Pearson, 54, leaned back in a metal chair like he'd done this before. His posture said he knew the rhythm. His voice said he could control it, but the room was built for a different purpose, to strip a story down to what can't be denied. Across from him, a detective flipped to a clean page. No rush, no raised voice, just a pen and a process. Eric's first move wasn't a denial, it was distance. He floated phrases like life preservers he hoped the truth would grab onto. "I never had a screwdriver in my hands," he said. Then, almost casually, he described one with a see-through blue handle. Or maybe yellow and black, or maybe the black Phillips he couldn't find. He could not seem to hold the same detail for 2 minutes. Tides kept pulling it away. He said he wasn't a bad person. He said he had an anger issue to a degree. He said words that sounded like excuses trying on alibis in a mirror. The detective didn't argue. He didn't need to. The room did the work. The case had arrived in that chair from a canal in Sunrise, Florida, October 2021, the place where investigators found the body of 33-year-old Erica Verdata. The search had started with quiet questions and ended with louder proof. Witnesses placed her with Eric, recently out of prison after decades served for killing before. Timelines connected, cameras remembered, phone records hummed their flat, emotionless chorus. Piece by piece, the night stepped into focus. Eric narrated the early hours like a man retelling a movie he'd half-watched, a laundromat stop, a light inside his truck he didn't like, a trip back to his condo where his mother slept, a phone call outside, a white car that appeared and left, a radio request, small talk, a joke that wasn't funny. He liked talking. When the story was his alone, it flowed. When it met a timestamp, it stuttered. The detective asked for clarity, not confrontation. Where did you put the screwdriver? Which dumpster? What time did that call happen? Eric gave locations, then adjusted them. He gave times, then adjusted those too. The story didn't get stronger, it just got longer. When he reached the fight, he shifted tones, earnest, almost wounded. He said he had been trying to calm her down. He said he had been struck, scratched, kicked. He said he was the one in danger. He painted Erica as frantic, painted himself as reasonable. In that version, the screwdriver kept moving by itself. Hers, not his, then somehow both of theirs, then somehow nobody's. He used the word accident as a shield. He used the phrase, "I was drained," like a passcode that might open a door to understanding. But understanding isn't the same as agreement. The detective let silence do what it always does here, press for truth. He circled back to one thread, the moments after. Not the confusion, not the struggle, not the blur. The decisions. The steps that suggest planning, the cleanup, the discarding, the ride, the wrap, the water. Eric insisted he wasn't thinking straight. He insisted he felt sorry. He insisted he tried to be respectful. He used that word repeatedly, as if saying it could rearrange what had already happened. Respect doesn't look like concealment. Respect doesn't weigh down evidence. Respect doesn't contradict itself every third sentence. He asked the detective a question he shouldn't have asked if his story were true. Was she dead before she went? In the water? It landed with a dull finality, an admission without the word admit. The detective didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He answered plainly that testing would reveal more. Eric nodded, said he hoped she hadn't suffered, and the room got colder. What made the interrogation so unsettling wasn't bravado, it was comfort. Most people crumble when facts close in. Eric tried to charm them. He tried to entertain them. He tried to out-talk gravity. He said he had placed items in a dumpster behind a fast food place. He said clothes were tossed, rags were used, surfaces wiped, timelines managed. Every "I can't remember" was followed by a crisp detail about a turn, a container, a handle color. Forgetfulness and precision don't usually hold hands like that. The detective pulled at another thread: history. This wasn't a first encounter with violence. Years earlier, there were convictions, terrible ones. The past doesn't decide the present, but it does cast a shadow you can measure. Eric tried to minimize it. Wrong crowd, bad luck, long time ago. But shadows from tall structures don't shrink because you squint. He circled back to Erica. He wanted the room to see her the way he was framing her, as the source of chaos, the spark he just reacted to. But what the investigation held didn't align with a simple reflex story. Surveillance undercut his timings, witness accounts undercut his calm, forensics undercut his "I never held it" claims. The canal undercut everything that tried to float. The detective's pen didn't stop. He confirmed places, routes, containers, and times. He confirmed that Eric would show them the disposal points. Eric agreed, calmly, like a man giving directions to a park he'd visited twice. Here is the quiet truth of an interrogation like this. Confession is sometimes a mosaic, not a single sentence, but 100 small admissions arranged in a pattern, yo. You can't unsee once it's built. Eric never said the exact sentence he hoped would save him. He said 50 others that did the opposite. He called it a fight. He called it bad thinking. He called it fear. But fear doesn't explain the structured steps that followed. Fear doesn't choose a route with fewer headlights. Fear doesn't separate items into different trash locations. Fear doesn't return to normal conversation on the phone as if the night were only inconvenient. Fear shakes, planning packs. When the detective asked what he'd say to Erica's family, Eric spoke softly. He said he was sorry for the outcome. He said things could have been handled differently. He wished certain parts were untrue. He wanted mercy without giving honesty. He wanted sympathy without surrendering the shape of the night. The room didn't argue. It didn't need to. The weight of the case now lived outside of Eric's control, on tape, on paper, in samples and swabs and timestamps. There was a canal that says nothing and remembers everything. There were witnesses who didn't rehearse but matched anyway. There was a pattern any jury could trace with a finger. The detective capped his pen. "We'll step out, make a few calls," he said, almost gently. "We'll be right back." Eric nodded, working his jaw as if there were something there to chew on besieged regret. He looked at the corner ceiling tile, then at the camera lens, then at his own hands, as if he could find a better version of the truth written across his knuckles. The room gave him nothing back. Interrogation rooms are made of surfaces that don't reflect what you want, only what is. Outside the door, the case moved forward in the way cases do. Calls, confirmations, a map with pins that do not budge. The hallway light flickered once and steadied, like a heartbeat finding its pace. No one raised a voice. No one needed to. In stories where arrogance meets evidence, the ending writes itself. Eric shifted in the chair, and for the first time all night, his posture lost. A little height, performances end, records endure. Somewhere beyond the cinder block and fluorescent hum, a family waited for answers that would not heal what happened, but would at least name it. Justice cannot turn back clocks. It can only stop them from being reset. The detective returned, opened the door, and the hinges whispered the same thing the evidence had been saying all along. The story you told is not the story that happened. The monster behind the calm. The detective didn't have to break Eric Pearson. All he had to do was listen. Hours had passed since Eric started talking, and by now the stories had twisted into loops. What began as calm explanations had become contradictions stacked so high they blocked the light. The detective knew this rhythm. Arrogance first, then fatigue, then the cracks. Across the table, Eric leaned back like a man explaining a movie he thought he had directed. He kept painting himself as a victim, a misunderstood ex-con who had just been in the wrong situation with the wrong woman. "I never meant for none of this," he said. "I was trying to calm her down." But calm isn't how the scene looked when investigators replayed it through the evidence. Blood in his truck, scratches along the door, a screwdriver with fingerprints and traces of Erica's DNA. The facts told a story that didn't ask for permission, a story of rage disguised as regret. The pattern of violence. Eric Pearson wasn't new to the system. He had been inside its walls before, for acts that looked far too much like this one. In 1985, a woman was found with her throat cut. In 93, a teenager was strangled. Both times, Eric called it a mistake. Both times, he claimed the same things: anger issues, confusion, self-defense. He had served almost 3 decades behind bars before walking out under Florida's gain time law, which reduced prison sentences for good behavior. Avior. He was supposed to have been reformed. The system said he was safe enough to walk free. Barely a year later, Erica Verdata was dead. Detectives knew his history, but they didn't lead with it. Instead, they let him fill the silence. In those pauses, Pearson's calm unraveled into confession. He claimed the screwdriver wasn't his, yet described its color and grip. He said he didn't stab her, yet explained in chilling mechanical detail the pressure and resistance he felt as the blade went in. Every word was an echo of the violence he pretended didn't belong to him. The story that didn't fit. The detective flipped another page. "You said she had the screwdriver first," he began, voice low. "So, when did it end up near her throat?" Eric rubbed his hands together. "I told you, she had it. I pushed her hand away. That's when it happened. My hand slipped." The pen stopped moving. "You pushed her hand? Into her own throat?" Eric nodded, then added, "At first it didn't go in. Took all my strength. I was drained. Then the eye, same thing." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Even the detective, seasoned and steady, looked down for a second before writing that line down word for word. Eric didn't see the horror in what he had said. He described it like a man discussing a repair job, not a human life. He smiled faintly. "You ever use a dull blade on plastic? You can feel it catch before it goes through. That's what it felt like. There are moments when a confession isn't about guilt. It's about ego." Eric wasn't trying to prove innocence anymore. He was trying to sound justified. He was performing for a world that had stopped clapping decades ago. The canal and the lie. By now, detectives already knew about the canal. That's where Erica's body had surfaced, wrapped in a tarp, weighed down with a rock, floating just below the surface of Sunrise, Florida's murky waterline. But they wanted to hear how he would explain it. "So," the detective said softly, "after everything that happened, what did you do?" Eric leaned forward. "I didn't know what to do," he said. "I panicked. I wanted to put her somewhere safe. I didn't want animals getting to her." The detective repeated the phrase. "Safe? Yeah, safe from the elements." That word, safe, hung in the air like fog. Eric used it over and over again, as if repetition could bleach its meaning clean. But the reality was simpler. People who panic call 911. People who plan take out the trash. He talked about tarps, tape, and rags. He talked about loading her body, cleaning surfaces, driving through early morning streets with her in the back seat. He talked about stopping at a KFC dumpster to get rid of evidence. He talked about taking his girlfriend, Sherry, to work right after. Every detail exposed intention, not fear. Every word deepened the hole he'd dug for himself. The slip that sealed his fate. The detective waited until Eric's story reached its final version, then quietly asked the question that ended it all. Was she dead before she went into the water? Eric blinked, caught off guard. I hope so, he said. I hope she didn't feel it. That was it. The unforced confession. The kind that doesn't need shouting, doesn't need handcuffs to make sense. You can lie about everything, but not about what you remember seeing when you moved the body. He talked about how her chest had still been moving, how he thought maybe she was breathing just a little, how he wrapped her anyway and pushed her into the water, how he hoped she'd already been gone. The detective didn't respond. He just let the silence sit, heavy as the canal itself. The narcissist's excuse, even as his own words buried him, Eric couldn't stop performing. He turned philosophical. You know, I'm not a bad man, he said. I just didn't think right. I was trying to be respectful. The detective tilted his head. Respectful? Eric nodded. If I didn't care, I'd have left her out there. I made sure she was wrapped, put somewhere decent. I didn't want her to, be messed with. Respect. From a man who had punched her 12 times, stabbed her 4 times, and left her in a canal. His use of the word twisted itself into something grotesque. He tried to soften his image again. I got issues. I got a monster in me sometimes, he said. But I don't mean no harm unless I'm pushed. The detective asked quietly, Did that monster come out that night? Eric looked down at his hands. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I guess it did. The weight of proof. Investigators didn't need dramatics. They had the evidence. Blood matched to Erica, DNA on the screwdriver, timeline gaps closed by surveillance cameras. They knew what he'd done before he ever opened his mouth, but his arrogance gave them the rest. He didn't just confess, he reconstructed. Blow by blow, wound by wound, he mapped out the crime under the illusion of self-defense. Even his girlfriend remembered the night, how he came home tired, anxious, muttering about getting rid of something. He told her not to open the door. She remembered his voice, calm, low, final. By the time detectives finished, Eric Pearson's story wasn't just inconsistent, it was impossible. His calm demeanor became the most revealing detail of all. The final pause. As the detective stood, Eric tried one more time to charm the silence. "You've been decent," he said. "Most wouldn't listen this long. You talk to me straight. That means something." The detective looked at him, tired, quiet, certain. "You talked straight too," he said, "just not in the way you think." Outside the interrogation room, the weight of decades hung in the air. A repeat killer who had slipped through the cracks once, finally caught again. The monster behind the calm had told his own story, and the system that freed him once was about to close the door for good. The confession that broke Florida, the morning after. By sunrise, detectives Ready had everything they needed. Eric Pearson's calm retelling of violence wasn't a mystery anymore, it was a roadmap. The confession sat on tape. The canal had given up its secret. The evidence matched his words down to the smallest fibers. The world outside the precinct hadn't woken yet when investigators drove to the dumpsters behind the KFC in Davie. There, just as Eric described, they found the remnants, rags, pieces of tape, and clothing soaked in blood. Each item whispered the same thing. This wasn't panic, it was procedure. Inside the interrogation room, Eric waited. He'd gone quiet, eyes drifting toward the one-way mirror, the red light still blinking. He looked tired, but not afraid, almost as if he believed the story he'd just invented could still rescue him. But the clock had already stopped. A history that should have ended sooner. Before 21, before Erica Verdata ever met him, Eric Pearson had been a name Florida prisons already knew. In 1985, he cut a woman's throat. In 93, he strangled a teenage girl named Jacqueline in Miami-Dade. He was sentenced to 40 years, but Florida's gain time law, meant to reward good behavior, shaved off more than a decade. He walked free after 27 years, calling himself reformed. That same year, he met Erica. Detectives who reviewed his past said the similarities were haunting, a pattern of manipulation, control, and explosive violence when women resisted him. Each time he claimed the same thing: "I lost control." But losing control doesn't explain planning, it doesn't explain cleanup, it doesn't explain lies rehearsed like lines from a play. When Eric talked about monsters, maybe he was telling the truth, just not in the way he thought. The courtroom silence. By late October 21, the story was everywhere. Local headlines called it the Screwdriver Murder. The mugshot of Eric Pearson was chillingly familiar to law enforcement. Even the prosecutor handling the case had seen his file before, from the 90s. In court, Eric didn't put up a fight. After hours of interrogation footage and forensic evidence, there was nothing left to argue. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for the death of 33-year-old Erica Verdata. The details were brutal. She had been stabbed 4 times, twice in the neck, twice in the eyes, then dumped in a canal, wrapped in tarps, weighed down with a rock. Eric claimed self-defense until the very end, but forensic reports destroyed his version. The wounds were deep, deliberate, and consistent with someone being restrained, not attacking. When the sentence was read, life in prison without parole, the room stayed quiet. Erica's family didn't cheer, they didn't speak. There was no victory in watching a cycle finally close. The judge simply said, "Mr. Pearson, your time outside ends today." And it did. A law under fire. As the verdict spread across Florida newsrooms, outrage followed. How could a man convicted of one murder, who had shown clear violence toward women, walk free only to kill again? Reporters dug into Florida's gain time system, a decades-old policy that cuts sentences for good behavior. On paper, it's about rehabilitation. In reality, it allowed a convicted killer to walk free years early. If he had served his full term, Erica would still be alive. That realization sparked a wave of public anger. Victims' families called for reform. Lawmakers debated whether to revise the rule. The media replayed his interrogation again and again. His smirk, his calm tone, his question. Was she dead before she went in the water? It was a chilling symbol of a loophole that cost a life. Behind the smile, inside the penitentiary where Pearson now lives, there are no interviews, no cameras, no more performances. But guards who saw him arrive said he was quiet, the same unsettling calm he carried in that room. No apologies, no emotion, Jay. Just a man who believed his own version of the world until it collapsed. For detectives who worked the case, the memory stayed. One of them said later, he thought charm could beat truth, but truth doesn't blink. And that's what this story became. Not just a record of what he did, but proof that some men mistake confidence for innocence and arrogance for immunity. Eric Pearson talked his way straight into a confession, one word at a time. The legacy of Erica Verdata. Erica wasn't famous. She didn't make headlines until after her death, but in the wake of the case, her story began changing laws. Advocates used her name when lobbying to reform Florida's early release policies for violent offenders. Her friends described her as kind, hopeful, and trusting. A woman trying to rebuild her life, unaware that the man sitting beside her had already destroyed others. Her story became a warning, not just about evil, but about the cracks that let evil walk free. The final words. When asked in court if he had anything to say, Eric paused, the same pause that filled his interrogation room days before. Then, almost rehearsed, he said, "I'm sorry for how it went down. I wish it could have gone different." But even that line was hollow. There was no tremor, no break, just words polished by years of pretending. And so, the story ends where it should have decades ago, with Eric Pearson behind bars for life. No more second chances, no more stories. Because sometimes, justice doesn't arrive fast, but when it does, it's absolute. If you made it this far, remember, stories like this remind us why awareness matters. Don't let these names fade. Subscribe for more real true crime breakdowns. Like the video if you believe justice should never have an expiration date. And comment below, do you think Florida's early release law should be changed forever? Stay safe, stay aware, because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look calm.